to you, Willard Shepard at Willard Shepard Law and Media, and In the Know here at Miami Community News. And today, one of my favorite shows here for you ever because of the distinguished panel that we have. Some of us going back here 2 decades. My friend and realty expert attorney, Ben Solomon at Solomon Cooperman, Melanie Hyer. We go back more than 2 decades as well at Pro Estate Realty, her expertise being in the probate properties and also foreclosure properties. And a person I know to my right, that would be Tainna Shepard. Full disclosure, she has that name for a very good reason. And with international realty expert with Brickell Realty Group. So first of all, thank you very much. No matter what happens over the next 29 minutes, you're still all stuck with me. So for those of you out there, I brought this group together because many of you may have heard about a change in the real estate industry and its impact that it may take place upon you. And that's because a settlement with the National Realtors Association after some litigation in the Midwest that actually can change how the buying and selling of homes takes place. And many people have a lot of questions about this, and there frankly has been a lot of misinformation. So first of all, to our counselor with us today, expert in this area, big picture, what happened?
Well, thanks for having me, Willard. This is a landmark lawsuit and judgment followed by a landmark settlement. And it basically was a challenge on the cooperative commission structure where buyers, agents would be fixed at a 3% commission, and it would be offered on the MLS. So that was the heart of what was being challenged legally, and the outcome is that that will no longer be the case going forward.
These litigants basically said there was collusion on both sides, that it was, unfair to people that were looking for a property out there. Address that part of this and how we ended up here.
Well, I think the problem is that in this scenario, the buyer and the buyer's representative don't really have a seat at the table at the initial point where the listing is made by the seller with the broker. And so that was really the essence of what was being challenged, is whether a buyer should have the opportunity to negotiate a different percentage commission and engage directly with their buyer agent. And at this point, that will be the way, again, that we will need to proceed. Again, it may be that buyers' commissions end up being very similar or the same, but it just, again, gives that buyer and the buyer's agent an opportunity or a seat at the table, as I say, in the transaction.
And on the legal front, we do need to add a caveat to say the court still has to finish its investigatory part of this and decide to allow this to go through. But it appears that they will do that sometime during the summer.
That's correct.
Okay, Ms. Hyer, people calling, asking, hey, wait a second, I want to go buy a house, especially here in South Florida with what has happened to real estate prices here. And what do you tell them about this?
So first of all, I want to just go back and say that real estate has never had any commissions that are fixed or standard. They have always been negotiable. That over my 2 decades of working in real estate, when I'm working with a buyer, I'll always go and meet with them in a buyer's consultation. And during that buyer's consultation, we will go over the buying process. Some people, they've never done it before. Some people have purchased many properties, but maybe some people haven't done it in Florida. So we go through the whole process, and at the end of that meeting, I engage with them with an instrument called a buyer's broker agreement. Now, is that common in real estate at today's day and age? No, it's not super common, but professional agents have been using those for decades. It's always been there. It's a form that we use, and I've been using it for decades. So
you think all of this is based on a misnomer, an assumption that this has taken place, something that I'm surprised that the Realtors Association didn't challenge during the litigation here, that the buyers have had a say?
Well, so it depends on your agent. Most agents are not trained to use a buyer's broker agreement. So I think that this lawsuit will help because it will come out. Because I always had, during that consultation, I would say, there's gonna be situations where my compensation might not be paid by a seller, and that would be a for sale by owner. That would be perhaps in a foreclosure situation. And in those situations, I still wanna represent you, I still wanna get you the right property for you, but I need to be compensated so that if a seller is offering to pay my commission, then you wouldn't have to be on the hook for it. However, if the seller is not willing to cover my commission, then you would, buyer, be on the hook for my commission. And so that was a conversation that we would have up front. And I said, hey, before we go and make an offer on a property, I'll let you know what the situation would be if you would have to participate in paying my compensation.
Ms. Shepard, on the international front, the implications of this.
Well, and I understand Melanie is talking specifically what is your area of expertise and what you do, which is probate and foreclosures. Have to add the same that she said. Commission has always been not a standard, but is even in the seller side has been negotiable. When you have a listing presentation and you go over, the process of selling as much as the process of buying, you present, what the standard is in the industry, which has been a 6% more or less, 5%, 6%, and then you take it from there. So it's never been like you don't have a room to negotiate as a seller. You always negotiate as a seller. That has been the standard, it's been acceptable, it's been working for decades, and I think it was a fair, share. Now, international buyers, I don't think they are yet much aware of the situation. They sure will be aware of the situation. My specialty is pre-constructions, and I've been doing that for 14 years. In the international side, I don't think that area in pre-construction is affected yet, but certainly in the side of the buyers from other countries, I'm concerned as well as first-time home buyers. Because of what kind of representation, how things are going to be approached, and the type of deal we can get to them. Because not everybody understands. Now they need to be responsible for the payment. And that is not going to be. So sometimes something that is a change, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and Rachel, if you want to start showing our beautiful pictures of South Florida here, and I'll ask Ben, what's your big take for people who are viewing this and attempting to gain information about how this impacts me? What impact do you think this will have on our real estate market here in South Florida? I always tell people that, hey, look, obviously the Atlantic's on one side, and the Everglades is on the other side. And I don't see Congress changing that border for the Everglades anytime soon. And they certainly can't change what's happening with the Atlantic Ocean at the shoreline. So therefore, the property values here can only go up because more people are coming. So what do you think is the impact of this?
Well, first off, the Realtor organization, both on the national, state, and local level, is an extremely efficient organization, and they have already been making preparations and will continue to do that over the next couple of months to be providing new commission agreements, new buyer representation agreements, and other forms that will assist the marketplace in this transition. I agree with you, though. I don't think property values will necessarily be affected by this. If anything, it may encourage additional competition. Miami-Dade's the largest market in the United States for realtors. The Miami Association of Realtors has over 50,000 agents in its membership. So, the market will stay strong. I have already seen adjustments, and as Melanie mentioned, a lot of brokers have been doing a lot of these things for a long time, so they're already prepared to make that shift very quickly.
We're seeing the pictures of the great things that are in our county with our airport, our palm trees, activities for people, and it's such an attractive place to live. Melanie, on this, for people that saw this the day that this first came out, it said, oh, wow, I'm going to be able to buy a house cheaper than what I was able to be before because this 3%, that's not going to be there anymore. I don't personally think that anyone that was trying to sell their house for $1 is going to walk up, and if you say you need to sell it for 97 cents to me, if they can get $1 for it, they will. What are your thoughts about how this could impact the ultimate price of the home, if at all?
So I think where we're going to have some issues is that sellers are going to try and say, hey, I'm going to pay my realtor, but buyer, you're going to have to go pay your realtor. And in theory, that sounds great. However, in practicality, it's not going to work very well because most buyers that are buying with financing, they don't have that extra money to be able to pay for their realtor. They really need to wrap that cost into the purchase price and kind of finance it over the long term. So therefore, we're going to have to keep a system where the sellers are still paying the commission and offering to pay the buyer's agents. I think what this will do is will raise the professionalism, because although I am a realtor that has been using buyer broker agreements for 2 decades, most of my my colleagues have not. And so I think that just like there's a meeting called a listing appointment for a seller, there will be a buyer listing appointment as well, where you sign up your buyer and you have an official agreement of what the expected compensation will be for the job. So I think this will be good in raising the professionalism, raising the transparency in our industry. And hopefully those are good things for consumers. But I think that the compensation will end up staying pretty similar to what it is, as far as that the sellers are still going to be compensating, because of the fact that I tell buyers when we sit down, I say, hey, you're going to have a 5% down payment or a 20% down payment, and you need to expect you're getting a loan, 5 to 6% of your purchase price is going to be your closing costs. And that's not including a real estate commission. So now you're going to say, hey, instead of a 5 to 6% closing cost, it's going to go up to closer to 10% because you now need to pay your realtor's commissions. Mm-hmm. That's just not going to work well in reality.
Yeah. Well, what about that with people that are first-time home buyers, especially in this marketplace, and what they may be facing, and this is an additional challenge for them?
It is. It's definitely an extra challenge for them. And I had that conversation coincidentally yesterday with the pre-approval that I got for somebody for an FHA. So, and this is the main thing. You are entering, for most people, I wish everybody can go with a 20% conventional, but some people have to use FHA loans with a 3.5 or 5% down, and that's all they have, plus the closing cost. So yes, you're having that conversation with a potential buyer. She addressed that with me. She said, I wish to have this before the summer, but I'm concerned because I don't have extra cash other than for this transaction. So yes, it is a change, definitely in everything that Melanie has very wisely pointed out. But people are definitely concerned. It's going to be a change. I think it's going to be. I don't see, as Melanie and I spoke before, who's winning at the end of this. It was working as an industry. I always saw. It was never an issue. The good level of representation you were going to have, as a buyer. Okay, you were always going to have a great realtor representing you during the whole transaction, and the money was never on the table on their side. So first-time home buyers definitely have an extra layer to worry about.
Been a lot of concern I've heard, and one that I have is that, and I would think the three of you would share that, is we're always concerned about people who are left out. Those of us, and you do your pro bono work for the Florida Bar, as do I. People can't afford an attorney. They need an attorney, but they can't actually pay for one. Mm-hmm. When an individual goes in this area where there are professionals like the two of realtors that we have with us now, and a person's going, I can do it by myself. Well, they haven't actually read any of the types of contracts that you have within your practice. Sure. What are your thoughts about people that say, I'm going to go and do it. I don't need either one of them or someone like them without their skill set. What type of landmines are out there for them, and what do you think reality will show about this?
I would highly discourage people from trying to buy a home on their own without a professional, including a qualified broker and a lawyer. There are plenty of pitfalls, of course, understanding the title documents, understanding whether there's encumbrances and encroachments and your survey issues and other issues that can arise. So I don't, and in the Miami Association of Realtors, there are almost no real estate agents who are not members of that. It is a minuscule percentage of people who do not participate, and they're pretty much left out of the resources of the Sure. association and the industry. So that won't be recommended. I think back to what we were just mentioning is that, certainly if the goal is not to shift all the cost to the buyer, those things will have to be negotiated. And again, I expect that commissions will likely stay very similar. Brokers are very competitive. They're professionals. They earn their living, of course, based on commissions. So there may be some slight negotiations out there, but it's that old proverb, you get what you pay for. So I believe that people will continue to use qualified professionals for their buying.
Melanie, do you think this has been mischaracterized? You and I had some conversations on the day that this actually was announced, this settlement, about the information the public was receiving and that not, in fact, being an accurate portrayal of what is happening here.
So we're all kind of navigating through this together. Mr. Solomon and Tainna and you and I, we're all getting this as it comes. We're having a lot of conferences with our local realtor association, educating us. And so we're trying to communicate with the public to stay calm. As we get information, we will let you know. That information will be coming in forms, in contracts, in disclosures that we will be obligated as realtors to give to our consumers. You know, we have to educate the public, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to do that. And so we will be doing that as it develops, as it comes out. So we're in this together. We've always been a liaison with the public to let them know what's going on in real estate, how this is going to help them, how this is going to benefit all of us. I'm hopeful that this will be a positive. We'll look back on this 10 years from now and say, okay, there was a few bad actors and that's why this lawsuit happened. And you know what? Let's make lemonade out of lemons, and let's raise the level of professionalism in our industry. Let's raise the level of transparency for our clients to always know what's going on. Because at the end of the day, we provide a service for the public. And my goal is always that they have a seamless real estate transaction. I'm here to accomplish their real estate goals. So as long as the professionals in our industry, we all kind of unite to have that goal, I think we should be fine. It's the bad actors that we need to, hopefully they'll get out of the industry, because if they have to now explain what their value is and they're not capable of doing that, hopefully they'll just find another industry to go to and leave the real estate for the people that really care about people and care about doing the right thing and following the rules.
Tainna, who do you worry about the most? You were talking about who wins here. Who do you think loses?
Well, loses, as I said, the first-time home buyers. I think that's the group that I'm most concerned about, and why it is. Even though that I mostly work with investors, and that's a sector that I don't really worry about, because they have enough cash flow to fund, if needed, your commission. Certainly my conversation yesterday with that buyer, and seeing the reality of what we face. I mean, I wish everybody was in a economical situation when they can have extra cash. But the reality is that, most people are not. And the reality is that, we are in a market that, the prices are high, the inventory is low, and it's very competitive. So reality is that, now, as Melanie says, it will raise for sure the expertise and the professionalism in the industry, the capacity of each one of us when we have a listing presentation to get the property, the capacity of negotiate that a commission, so we can, secure the other side, or at least contribute somehow to the other side, so the buyer side is not affected as much.
Ben, our Mayor Levine Cabot talks about an affordable housing crisis in our community here. What do you see, just big picture, for the South Florida real estate market? We've come out of the pandemic. I was downtown where my law office is now on Flagler with Brett Rifkin, and walked on Flagler that, everything is gone now, but it looks like that it's going to be a paradise when it's over. Where are we today, and where do you see the market overall going over the next decade?
Well, one of the things about South Florida that's surprising in that it's not like most places in America is the volatility of the marketplace. Our prices soar 50% high, they go down 40%. We've been through quite a few cycles that have shown that, and we're in yet another. South Florida got an amazing bounce, I'll say, out of COVID. Again, somewhat of a surprise, or maybe not. It's, of course, the best place to live. But, New York came here, California came here, South America came here. All kinds of people came to South Florida and drove prices up. Market certainly cooled off quite a bit, but it'll continue to thrive and be cyclical that way. On the affordable housing note, I really have to commend the mayor and the county and the builders on their efforts to assist with affordable housing. It's an important mission. I represent builders and other developers who specialize in that. There's been a lot of push for incentive programs, and I know that the market is working very closely with the county to establish new affordable housing projects throughout the county. So I think that's encouraging.
You talked there about some of your clients who have invested their properties in this. I imagine that's a very difficult thing to do in a sense of, because we don't have basically any real estate left, when they make an investment to obtain a piece of real estate, especially near where our job centers are, the value of doing an affordable housing unit versus having one on the open market would be quite a challenge. How do you navigate that, or how do your clients navigate that?
Well, that's why public-private partnerships are so important. It does take a partnership between the county to offer incentives, dedicate land, make exceptions to certain zoning requirements as needed, to equal out those finances and those issues that builders face on their decision whether to build something at a higher end of the market or an affordable housing. But again, I've been impressed with the county's commitment to these issues as well as the private sector. And but typically it will take some sort of cooperation between the public-private sector to get a lot of those projects to be accomplished. Sure.
Melanie, on your area of this, where the foreclosure properties, there were times you and I would have conversations on the phone about gigantic numbers and volumes of foreclosed properties out there. How have we done after the pandemic now that some time has gone by, and where are we in the marketplace with that?
I mean, foreclosures are at an all-time low. And then, so we really don't have very many distressed properties on the residential side. You're starting to see more distressed properties in the commercial area, on office buildings across the country. South Florida is very high in demand. Our prices went up a lot. So there's a lot of equity in properties down here right now. So the foreclosure market is almost non-existent at this point. We might be seeing something come back in that because of some people during the COVID time decided to take adjustable rate mortgages at 2%, and now they're coming up for the adjustment, and the rates are close to 7% at this point. So we'll see what happens with pre-foreclosures. That will be the first indicator, and then we'll see. As Ben mentioned, we have a very volatile market in South Florida. We have high highs and low lows, and if you look back to the 70s, the 60s, I mean, it's just always been that way in South Florida. We remember very clearly the 2008 crash, so we'll see what happens.
And Tainna, on the condominium side and the building there, it seems that anytime there's a parcel of land anywhere from South Miami Avenue all the way up through Sunny Isles and Golden Beach and along in there, that it's going to be a high rise and a high rise that has a significant portion that could be in there from international buyers. That expansion is happening daily, and you see that continuing?
It is. It is happening daily, and it will continue. Miami has the strongest market for international buyers for the last 15 years in the industry. It's the number one market in United States. I mean, talking about Florida. And out of that, the main market is Miami-Dade County and Broward and West Palm Beach. Being the number one, of course, Miami-Dade County, 47% of international home buyers' preference. But in the whole United States, we account for the 11%. I mean, so it's a huge market inside of all Florida. We account for the 18% of the international market. And yes, international buyers like condos. by a large number. 56% of international buyers like condominiums. So yes, I see that trending going and continuing.
Ben, what advice do you have? We've got about 5 minutes left, and I want each of you to touch base on this. In light of the National Realtors Association, the settlement that we think will be approved and go into effect during the summer, what advice do you have for a person that's looking for a property here in South Florida now and person that's selling a property here in South Florida?
Well, the first thing will be the shift in the timing. Tainna was just mentioning there's current transactions underway where some of the sellers and buyers are confused whether this law is taking effect or the settlement will impact them today, and it won't. But there will be a cutoff, as you mentioned, in the midsummer. So there'll have to be a shift in the way that the brokers, as Melanie mentioned, are presenting to the buyers in anticipation of those changes. But I think, again, it just becomes even more critical for both parties to find really qualified professionals. I think they'll need to rely potentially even more on their buyer representation side. And hopefully that'll be a positive thing for the market.
Mel?
I think in markets like this, in a good market and an easy market, people will just use their friend. Oh, I have a friend in real estate, like they're doing them a favor. You really need to work with a professional. You need to work with somebody that's full-time, somebody that's done many transactions, that's been involved in this, because if you are going to be paying for a service, you want to make sure you're getting value out of what you're paying for. And so you want to go to the professionals, especially through this transition. People that have seen various market cycles, have seen, talking about foreclosures. The foreclosures, they used to only offer us realtors 1% on the buyer side. So we had to be making that up from our buyers. Say, hey, I got this great deal, but it's a foreclosure. The bank's not paying my full commission. I need you to pay the rest. It's about having transparent conversations with people. And so during the transition, more important than ever, work with a professional.
Ms. Shepard.
No, definitely, I concur with both of them. Now that we're navigating together, as Melanie said before, these changes in the industry, which is new for the client and it's new for us as a professional, we all have to have an adjustment process and procedures that I'm sure the Realtor Association will come up with all these forms and all these addendums and things that we have to disclose as part of our fiduciary responsibility with the client. It is more important than ever, for us as a professionals to prepare and continue to be the best advocate for our client, because real estate, as I always say, is an art of advocacy. And we always have the best interest for our clients. And in this new process is how we're going to find the balance to get the right compensation, to serve the client with the same integrity and ethical and professionalism, and continue moving forward together as a team.
Ms. Hyer, I'll ask you. I know a young person who lives not far from me, like down the hall, who graduated from college and came out of the Marine Corps and would like to buy a home, but says, I need to go to Orlando or the Panhandle. What advice do you have for people like that young man who's a fantastic person who would like to be able to do that and raise a family?
Unfortunately, since COVID, I've had to have a lot of conversations with Miamians, and Mayor Suarez had a big campaign. He put billboards up in New York and California, and he said, move to Miami. Well, they did. And Mayor Suarez didn't think about, what about Miamians? And so unfortunately, I used to say I was the Grim Reaper back in the 2008 time. Now I'm the Grim Reaper in a different way. I go around giving bad news to Miamians, saying, hey, your landlord is selling your property, and unfortunately you're going to need to move, and most likely you need to consider moving outside of the South Florida area, especially Miami-Dade County, because it's become unaffordable. Your $1,000 rent, your $1,500 rent no longer exists for a family down in South Florida. You most likely will need to move to Broward or Orlando area, Ocala, basically everywhere else in Florida except for our county, which makes me very sad because it's going to change our community a lot. And so I really applaud Mayor Levine Cava for her efforts to try and make opportunities with these public-private developments to encourage developers to create products for people to stay in South Florida. And, you know, the person that lives down the hall, you know, he's a veteran. So that's wonderful because there's special programs for veterans to get 100% financing and things like that. So potentially, if they can get one of those quote high-paying jobs that we're supposed to have down in South Florida these days, then he could potentially get it. It's just we have to see if all of that's going to work out.
We appreciate the time. Ben Solomon, Solomon Cooperman, Melanie Hyer, Pro Estate Realty, and Tainna Shepard, Brickell Realty Group. This is a conversation that will certainly continue here on In the Know. So stay with us in the next coming weeks and up through the summer so we can keep you up to speed as to how you should handle your specific real estate needs.